Hello everyone, we'll now be working on 8.3, graphing f of x is equal to ax squared plus bx plus c, part 2. Alright, let's begin. So on the first one, we'll learn how to graph an equation like the one you see right here. So we're going to try to graph 3x squared minus 6x plus 5. So what we're first going to do is, let's just take a look at this real quick. We have 3x squared minus 6x plus 5. Remember that this is our C, or also known as our y-intercept. So that means we can right away go ahead and label that in our graph as one of our points. Alright, somewhat close enough. Okay, so after we do that, our next step, step 2, is to find our axis of symmetry and graph it. And remember once again, the formula to find our axis of symmetry is the following. X equals negative b over 2a. And here, let's go ahead and label our a and b real quick. A is going to be 3, and our b is going to be negative 6. Let's go ahead and plug this in now. Our b is going to be negative 6, bring the 2, and our a is 3. So when we go and simplify this, we're left with negative 6 over 6, which is equal to positive 1. So that means x is equal to 1. So that means if we go back here, we can label where our line of symmetry is going to be. It's going to be right over here. And from here, let's go ahead. So we know our axis of symmetry is 1. And now that we know it's 1, from the last lesson, you remember that if you have the axis of symmetry, you're now able to find the what? The vertex. So step 3 is use this x over here, x equals 1, and plug it into our original equation. So our x is 1, so we're going to plug that in. And let's go ahead and solve this. 1 to the power of 2 is 1, so we just have 3 times 1. Let me erase this here. 6 times 1 is 6, plus 5. Now 3 times 1 is 3, minus 6, plus 5. Oh, and I should have, let me erase this real quick. I should have written f of x here. F of 1 in this case, since we're plugging in 1, right? We're plugging in 1, so it's going to be f of 1. Okay, let's go back to this again. 3 minus 6 is negative 3. Plus 5, and that will give us positive 2. So now, what is our vertex? We have 2 here. This 2 is our y. So what can we do with this information? Well, we have y equals 2 and x equals 1. So that will mean that our vertex is going to be 1, 2. So now we can go ahead and plug this into our graph again. Let's see here. So let's go to the right. So remember, we begin right here, and since it's 1, 2, we go 1 to the right and up 2. And as you learned previously, since this is the axis of symmetry and we have one right here, we're able to use this point, the y-intercept, to find out our next point. Because if there's one to the left of the axis of symmetry, then there should be one to the right. So there's going to be a second one right there. So now we're able to create our graph. Let's use a different color actually. Here's a rough sketch of what it would look like. So remember, once you find your axis of symmetry and you know what your y-intercept is, all you need to do is reflect it across the same number of spaces, right? Notice here, you can label this real quick again. So notice here that this difference between this and this is 1, and the difference between this and this is 1 as well, aka symmetry. So that's how you would graph 3x squared minus 6x plus 5. Now let's go ahead. Oh, and one more thing before we continue. If it helps, you could also create a graph as you go along. So let me show you an example of what I mean. So you can create your own table, right? And we figured out here that our vertex was 1, 2. So we would go ahead and write this down here. And since we know our y-intercept is positive 5, we could write this here. And since we know that the axis of symmetry means that it has to be reflected on the other side, we know that our second point is going to be 1, 5. And as long as you have a vertex and one other point, you'll be able to create a graph. You can use that one point that you find, which is the y-intercept, and reflect it to find your third point. Okay,